Hey everybody, welcome to a special episode of Southern Fried Geekery Podcast. I'm Caleb.
I'm Craig.
And we're coming to you today with this kind of a special episode because if you open up the funny section of whatever your local paper is, you're going to see a Dick Tracy comic strip that's in there by a friend of ours named John Lucas. Now Craig is actually a better friend of John Lucas. He's known him a lot longer than I have. But Craig was able to get us an interview with him.
Yeah, we had a good time. We went and met John over at his house and sat around and just kind of geeked out at his office for a minute, and then sat down and talked to him for a little while, and it was a good interview. Yeah,
it was, dude, a blast. Getting to see his getting to see his very impressive studio, getting to see all the artwork that he's got done. It's amazing. He lives in a little museum, basically, to comic art.
We were looking through some of the art from his graphic novel that's coming out, and I think in the interview I said that it's some of the best work I've ever seen of his, and that's straight up. It really is. It's some of his best work.
It is. He's an extremely talented man who's been in the industry for a long time.
Yeah.
You're going to hear him talk about working for a number of companies. Like Marvel, like Dynamite, Boom. I think he's done some work for DC. Worked for literally everybody and Kitchen Sink, which is a joke that we make in that podcast. So let's take a minute and let's let John Lucas have the floor.
Southern Fried Geekery.
Your notes on your phone, is that what?
No,
we just gonna free ball it.
Just free ball it mostly. So, hey guys, we are sitting here with Mr. John Lucas. I'm Caleb.
I'm Craig.
And we.
You can leave the free balling part.
I'm going to leave the free balling part in there
now. So.
See, I was free balling before I knew it was cool. But, we want to thank you for letting us come into your home and chit chat with you,
of course.
And also just taking the time to hang out with us and talk about your art and some of the books that you've worked on and that you are continuing to work on.
Okay.
Yeah. So just so for our fans the people listening who may not know the extent of the catalog of your work, shame on them. But you've worked for about every publisher in this industry.
A lot of them, yeah. I'm that utility infielder that bounces around from team to team. So, you don't really know who I am. It's there's a good buddy of mine he's still a pretty big name in comics. I used to always joke that if he's the Derek Jeter of comics, I'm the Louise Soho.
That's a good reference.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've worked from, I think, Dark Horse?
Marvel, Dark Horse, DC, Vertigo, Wildstorm, when it was still independent, Wildstorm. I've worked for, which is Silvestri's one. I can't remember which one his is.
I can't do that.
And worked for Todd McFarlane's.
Yeah.
Branch of it,
yeah.
And then I'm working for a company right now called Insight, the Houdini graphic novels that I'm working on. They're the Sideshow Toys people.
Yep.
And they're getting into comics because I guess they had some money that they just needed to take a loss on for tax purposes. And then they also do the art books. They do all of Guillermo del Toro's art of books. But if you see a movie that's heavily art directed,
mm-hmm.
and then they put out a book later on that says the art of The Shape of Water, they do those.
Oh,
very cool.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And
I've seen some of those. I don't guess I realized who actually was putting those out.
There were probably more, but they do that. And like I said, they do at least Mark Irwin, my editor, who I've known since the Wildstorm days. He told me, he was the one who gave me the straight dope on that.
Yeah.
So he told me about it. Otherwise, I don't know anything.
For some reason in my head, I guess I've always thought it was IDW because they have so many of those licensed.
Well, they do
they did the Mad Max one, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they do a lot of the artist edition stuff too.
Oh yeah.
I was going to say even for Marvel, the old Kirby stuff, the old Ditko stuff, the old Buscema stuff. Yeah. They'll put out all of those. I think they still put out a lot of the Disney, the Duck stuff.
Yeah.
There's some connection between IDW and Marvel. I don't know what it is, but there is some because they have all the kids stuff that you would think that should belong. Well, they do all the Walt Disney stuff and they do all the Star Wars kids stuff, which is kind of weird because Marvel's owned by Disney.
They may have had the contract before and it hasn't lapsed yet.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But yeah, the old Carl Bark stuff, they do a lot of that too.
Yeah. They do a lot of the strip collections. I have the Flash Gordon ones.
Yeah.
And they've kind of not picked up the slack because Fantagraphics does it, but they're doing some of what Fantagraphics has always been known for, is collecting old strip material that, only art nerds like me like.
I love them.
Speaking of strips, you just did some Dick Tracy stuff.
Hey, nice segue.
Right.
Nice segue. Yeah,
almost like we've done one or two.
Yeah. I just did a week of Dick Tracy strips. They're going to run from No Foolin', April 1st to April 8th. So celebrate the resurrection of Christ and April Fools.
I love that Easter falls on April Fool's Day.
By reading a Dick Tracy strip drawn by me. Yeah.
Who wrote that?
Mike Curtis, the guy who regularly writes the strip. He's actually lives not too far from here. He does the Conway show every year.
Okay.
And that's how I met him. Just one year I sat, I don't remember if I was right next to him or a table or two away, but I noticed that he worked on the Dick Tracy stuff, and so I just struck up a conversation with him because I love old comics. I mean, I like all old comics and comic strips. That's my favorite stuff.
Well, it's where you get most of your, it's where, in a lot of ways, it got to start, is in those.
Oh, absolutely,
those sequential strips.
Yeah.
So, and especially the old pulp stuff.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. Yeah. Which you've done your fair share of pulp stuff as well. I know you've done Conan.
I'm not that old.
Well, no, pulp-esque.
Well, like modern pulp.
In the pulp genre.
Yeah, I mean, I worked on Conan. I inked it.
Yeah.
That counts, I guess.
I think it does. Definitely does. What was that like, getting to do those? Because I know you're a big. You took us back to your library earlier, and you've got a ton of the old Conan stuff. You've got a bunch of Tarzan stuff in there.
Yeah. Well, Conan is what got me into comics. Conan and John Carter of Mars, really. But more Conan than anything. But because when I was a kid, I read Conan and the John Carter stuff. And then a buddy of mine I went to school with, he brought the very first Conan comic I ever saw was number 7, the Barry Smith God in the Bowl issue, and it just blew my mind. And then very shortly after that, my dad, for whatever reason, he brought home a book of like spaceship drawings, because again, this was about the time of Star Wars and all that. And he brought home this book of like spaceship designs. I wanted to know where he got that, so he took me to a used bookstore / comic shop. We were living in Waco, Texas at the time. He took me in there, and they had all these pictures of Kiss and stuff back behind the counter that they sold 8x10 glossies of different celebrities, and they had Kiss pictures, but then they also had comics. And I saw some Savage Sword of Conan comics. And
I love those.
With the John Buscema with the cavalcade of Filipino inkers, sprucing it up real nice, and that stuff just blew my mind.
Yeah, that old Buscema. I've got a lot of those that I've just collected through the years. Going back and get it because I'm a huge Conan fan. My wedding was blessed by Crom.
Oh, right on. He doesn't care.
No, not a bit. He's just sitting high on his mountain, just looking down in shame. So that was your first experience with comics.
Yeah, I mean, when I was really little, I remember my mom brought home a Treasury edition of one of the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeers when I was real little. And then I remember on a road trip, either going to visit my dad's family or my mom's family, I just don't really remember, I bought a comic.
Yeah.
And it was an issue of Commandi, but it was post-Kirby, one of the Chick Stone issues. Because I actually saw it later. And I've just had this vivid memory of some of the last pages. All of the characters are wrapped up in cocoons.
Yeah.
With these, I guess, sort of caterpillar-type mutants wrap them up in and stuff. And I had that image carrying around in my mind forever. And at one point I saw the issue later. Yeah, because I was a little kid. I didn't keep it. So the very first comic that I ever said, "Mom, I want a comic," was an issue of Commandi, but it was post Jack Kirby.
Still some good stories. So I always ask this question to artists whenever I'm talking to them. Back when I was a kid, you'd open up comic books like you were saying. You just open up, it's just a comic book.
Yeah.
But you always have that moment where you're looking at a comic book and you realize it's more than just pictures.
Some
on a
dude
page.
made this. Yeah.
Yes, somebody made this.
John Severance Cole.
That was your guy?
Yeah. Because as much as I loved the Savage Swords, I was just seeing pictures. I was like, holy crap, this is Conan. The first comics that I bought, if we're going to make the distinction between black and white magazines and comics, were Cole.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cole the Conqueror by John Severin, and then Mike Plug took over after that in that first issue of his. The By This Axe I Rule. Just one issue. The one issue he got to ink himself is just one of the most beautiful comics I've ever seen. I love it. But the John Severin stuff, who I recognized from Cracked Magazine growing up.
Yeah. Right.
Because like I'm sure you guys did, because we're old enough that, you know, Mom would drag us to the grocery store and we would hang out a little bit, but then we'd cut over to the magazine racks. And
Mad Magazine and Crack Magazine, those were some of my first comic books.
I had to sneak it. I was raised by a hyper fundamentalist. So
oh, really?
I was hiding behind the magazine rack, like, you know, behind like Flowers and Jesus, and sneaking these things.
Yeah, and that and the rock and roll magazines like Cream and Hit Parader and all that. That's actually when I swear I'm not name dropping, but Paul Pope, when he and I first met, what we bonded over was because he's from Ohio, I think. I don't know, I've got a bad memory, but he didn't grow up in New York. He moved there. You know, me being a kid in Waco, Texas, that was our doorways to other cooler, better worlds were Cream Magazine and Heavy Metal Magazine.
Yeah.
Because we would see those, and I remember seeing the Rodney Bingenheimer stuff in the back, and, you know, you'd see him hanging out with, like, you know, the Ramones and Blondie and Patti Smith and even like Cheap Trick and all these great like bands. And you'd see this like culture, and then all the articles about like who the hell are the New York Dolls? Who's David Johansen? And you know, and growing up these little like podunk towns. Well, I mean, we're just talking about like how Waco, you know, it has from when the time I was a kid. It really is a much better town. We'll edit all this. Oh, no, we'll leave this in. But, yeah, I mean, it was an abysmal place to grow up if you were interested in anything other than just what they were serving.
Right,
you
just
know?
farming and rural life. And,
and it's home of Baylor University, the largest Baptist university in the world, and they didn't want anything there. I mean, I mean, for the longest time, concerts wouldn't come there. Not even just rock and roll concerts, but country concerts. Because they were like hardcore, like Southern Baptist, no drinking, no dancing, at least not in public where people can see you. And so, I mean...
Well, places like that really eschew culture. Like our definition of culture, maybe, per se. You know, they've got their brand, and they like to stick to it.
Well, they don't want to be challenged.
No, they don't. They
you know...
And, you know, rural Arkansas is not much different.
No, I mean, I wasn't going to shit on it because I'm living here now. But, I mean, it's tough to get anything that is out of the ordinary. You really got to hunt for it, which isn't a terrible thing. I mean, forcing you out of your comfort zone. If you really hunger for it, you will try and go find it.
Well, and I think but that's the important thing for those magazines, like Heavy Metal. When I was growing up, it was, you know, Revolver magazine. Different music magazines and stuff.
Well, I'm a lot older than you then. Yeah.
Right. I remember yours.
Cream, Circus, Hit Parader.
I'm 30. I think I'm not too much younger than you guys.
No, I'm turning 50 in a month.
Well, you look youthful as fuck.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
you got good skin. Your mane is full body.
My long, luxurious mane.
You kept your hair.
Yeah,
I lost mine.
Well, I can't grow sideburns. That's the deal with the devil I made. I wish I had sideburns.
I kind of wish that I could lose some of this and gain some of that back.
Man,
my beard.
I'm a hairless bear. That's my stick.
You know, there's a freak for every kink. Man.
Hey, there you go.
Right.
But what I was saying is, you know, you have those magazines, these media outlets that allow you to go out and find culture, especially, you know, art and music that you just don't see anywhere else. You can't get it from the radio because they're not going to play it. You know, they're playing top 40 stuff, even in the rock and roll world. You know, I didn't hear Pantera until I saw Pantera in a magazine, and they were the first metal group on the charts. For the longest time to hit number one and stay there for a while. And you still couldn't hear that on the radio.
I remember when they were a hair metal band.
Right.
So
Dimebag and Zakk Wylde, you know, grabbing onto the coattails of the guys from Kiss.
Yeah.
Who were some of your bigger influences as far as that you tried to make your art style or tried to mimic?
It's bounced around over the decades. When I was a kid, I mean, John Byrne was God, you know. But then I saw Walt Simonson did that X-Men Teen Titans crossover. And I wasn't, you know, I was a Marvel zombie. I wasn't reading any DC stuff. And I guess you know, at that point, maybe it was about the time that he did the Thor. I don't know what the timeline was, but I saw that and I was like, holy crap, man, this is different.
Yeah.
And then the Thor, and then right about that time, Paul Smith came on, and he was a totally different flavor. I mean, it doesn't seem that earth-shaking now, but at the time, you think about, like, what mainstream Marvel Comics were, they were still kind of like doing that recycled kind of like John Buscema and Byrne, and then some people kind of trying to emulate Byrne, I guess, a little bit. But it was very Cockrum-y, and not to talk smack about Cockrum, but it was very sort of traditional comic books. And then
guys who were trying to emulate people like Will Eisner.
Well, not even that. I mean, that people didn't. You know, I'm sure artists did, but they weren't. Nobody was trying to copy that other than Plug. I mean, it was second, third, fourth generation, you know, Kirby, Buscema, and starting to be kind of Byrne. Because the Image stuff hadn't hit yet.
Right.
And Paul Smith coming on X-Men and Doctor Strange, just that nice, sleek, sort of streamlined style was really just striking. Yeah, and Simonson, and then right about that time in the 80s was when there were reprints. There was a Quality Comics started reprinting all of the Judge Dredd stuff and the Titan trade paperbacks and that stuff. And then PC and Eclipse came around. Dave Stevens, and then, you know, Fantagraphics, we talked about it earlier, Love and Rockets, and First Comics putting out Steve Rude, and all of this great stuff that was, and, you know, still looking at heavy metal, and Epic Magazine. Marvel had its creator line, Epic, where they did all this great stuff. I mean, the 80s were as much of a cultural sinkhole that it is in a lot of ways. There was a lot of cool independent stuff going on. You know, think about like the kind of the second wave of punk rock music, and then you have self-publishing, and then the you know, Cerebus is around, and
Turtles came out of that.
Yeah, and that's what, you know, whenever I do cons or go to talk to classes or whatever, people, you know, the question is, how do you break into comics? And I've never. I bought like issue 2 of the Turtles, and other than the Richard Corbin issue and the Michael Zulli issues, I've never bought another issue. Well, no, I bought some of Andy Coombs. Yeah. But as like the original Turtles, I never bought any of that stuff because it just wasn't my thing. But what that sparked with it was very much like punk rock. This DIY sort of, you know, holy crap, those guys can't play their instruments, but I can do that.
It's more than some of their parts.
Yeah, I don't have to be Jimmy Page, you know, to bang this out, you know, and that's what the Turtles with the black and white explosion did. It, you know, buddies of mine and I in Waco, in Texas, self-publishing comic books, and then we'd go to conventions. And before I moved back to Austin, would go to conventions and met the Austin gang there, and they were self-publishing, and we started doing things for each other's stuff, just like fanzine culture.
I was going to say, that's kind of the zine culture now even is doing a lot.
Yeah, like, you know, punk rock bands, you know, let's split a 7-inch, you know, what's on one side on the other. And we would work on these anthologies. The anthologies are gone. I mean, back then, anthologies, you could do it.
Yeah.
And not only that, but like small press publishers, like Caliber. I worked at Caliber. I think Mike Allred worked there. Phil Hester worked there. Mike Lark. I mean, all these guys that I kind of know still are like, you know, Phil and I are still buddies.
Is that when you met James O'Barr?
No, I actually didn't meet him until later.
Because I know that's where Crow got started. Was in.
Yeah. No, that was later. But yeah, it's like these independent publishers would pop up, and you could make a little bit of dough in your spare time.
Yeah.
Doing these comics. And it was great because not only were you working in comics and making a little money and getting some exposure, it was on the job learning.
Yep.
And at the time, especially like Vertigo, was using those guys like farm team. Mm-hmm. You know, it was around that time I was doing some stuff for them, and Mike Lark and I had become buddies because he was in Dallas. I think he still is in Dallas at the time. And we met at conventions, and he had broken in at Vertigo, and he introduced me to Mark Chiarello. Mm-hmm. Mark and I hit it off.
Yeah.
And so he would throw my name out there.
We actually got to speak with Nancy Collins not too long ago, who was, you know, first woman that wrote Swamp Thing and did a lot of work with Vertigo and stuff too. And it was off the air, but she was telling us a little bit about that, about how, you know, you made these connections with people
and that were wanting to do this more indie style, and that was where Vertigo kind of came from.
Yeah.
Was this birth of
that and the Brits,
trying to take the stuff that was quote unquote indie, but pull it in mainstream.
Yeah, 2000 AD and Warrior magazines, man, they had a huge impact on comics. And the 80s were great, man. For comics, holy crap,
they really were.
Great.
Some of the stuff I consider grails. Came out of the 80s. I mean, not just for Marvel, but like you said, 2000 AD. There's some great Conan stuff that came out of the 80s. There is the Marvel stuff. I mean, some of the best X-Men stories are 80s branded now. But so I want to back up just a little bit, though, because we were talking about some of your first influences and your first heroes.
Oh, yeah, I kind of got off the...
Oh, no, that's fine.
That
was a great tangent to go on. Thank you for taking us on that little ride. But when did you cross that bridge from just appreciating comics into putting pen to paper? So what was that process, or was it even a process? Was it just you kind of one day you just started scribbling? Like, when did you decide that you wanted to emulate this art?
Well, I mean, everybody starts copying other crap. And, I mean, every now and then I'll draw a face and I go, oh, that's a John Severin face, or that's a John Byrne face, or, just because it's in the catalog somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Honestly, I mean, that's another question you get at conventions all the time. It's like, well, when did you start drawing? It's like, everybody draws. It's just most people have the good sense to stop. But my wiring is screwed up. So I honestly believe people who are, artistically inclined, I guess, not that I want to throw that dirty word out there, but like musicians and writers and cartoonists, we're not wired right. So the way that we process this world that doesn't make any sense to us is to sort of create a fantasy world around ourselves. And how I did it was to draw pictures, because I'd rather be hanging out with Conan and all this stuff than dealing with all this trifling bullshit. And
regurgitate all this pop culture back out of your mind,
or just whatever, the fantasy world was always more interesting. And then through the comic books, that's another thing that kind of I miss. Not to be I'm gonna be the old man all through this, shouting at the kids to get off my lawn. But a cool thing that you don't really see anymore, I think, because the internet has sort of displaced it, was you used to go to a comic shop. And I said, back behind the counter are all those 8x10 glossies. On the other wall back behind the counter were drawings. Mm-hmm. And it was customers that came into the store, and they would put their drawings back there. Well, I came in as a kid who drew. I saw the pictures. I started drawing pictures, and I'd hand them to Donna, who was the owner of the place, and she posted it up there. And through that, some other guys who were like a few years older than me, who were wanting to do comics, saw my artwork and said, hey, that kid might be able to draw, with a little bit of, being shown something other than John Byrne comics.
Right.
It was a guy named Hal Jones and a guy named William Traxtel who they were the ones who introduced me to Bernie Wrightson and Barry Smith and Neil Adams and Kaluta. And, really, I mean, I'd seen Frazetta on the Conan covers, but like I said, I thought they were cool covers, but I never put two and two together that, somebody drew this.
Yeah, exactly.
Who is this dude? I didn't search it out, and they turned me on. They showed me a collection with his 1950s comics in it. Where it's like, okay, this is ink. I understand this.
Next thing you know, you're walking around with a Molly Hatchet album and just love it.
I never bought I never bought into Molly Hatchet.
That was actually my first introduction into Molly Hatchet. Is I had into Frank Frazetta. I had a friend that loved Molly Hatchet.
Yeah.
I don't know why he was my friend.
With disaster.
Yeah.
I don't know why he was my friend, but he loved Molly Hatchet.
Hey man, for that type of stuff, it's fine.
But he had
Have you ever read the Carl Edward Wagner books?
No.
Oh, you got to read the Kane book, because those are what those paintings are for.
Oh, okay.
The dude with the redheaded beard, Carl Edward Wagner, and he actually wrote some. Have you ever seen the 3 book club Conan books? It's People of the Black Circle, The Devil in Iron, and I forget what the other ones are back there on the shelf. They have Ken Kelly photos, but Carl Edward Wagner edited those.
Oh, okay.
And then he had his own character called Cain, who is essentially Cain from the Bible. He's marked with the red hair, and he gets into these adventures, and they were great. And they had you should check those out.
I definitely need to.
Yeah, Carl Edward Wagner. Dude,
definitely check those out.
Yeah.
Dude, and Frazetta never slept, so he was just constantly awake. Yeah. My first thing, I love the Death Dealer. I know that's a cliche thing to do, but
that's cool. It's awesome. There's a reason why it's inescapable. It's because it's badass.
My favorite, I called him my uncle, but he wasn't technically my uncle, but might as well have been. He was like a second cousin or something, but he had a giant print of the Death Dealer hanging up in his house all growing up. And so that was my first, like, I grew up, looking at Uncle Ronnie's picture of the Death Dealer while I was playing with my Aliens and Predators toys and at his house, and just having this, this figure on a horse looming over me. Yeah. And that was just instilled in my brain. And figure out who Frazetta is. And, once you do that, you can't help but go down that rabbit hole. Yeah. And then you do find, people like Wrightson through that. And that's, I knew Frazetta before I knew Wrightson. Yeah. Which is, kind of comic book blasphemy, I think.
Well, I knew Frazetta before Wrightson.
You come to what you come. I mean, I knew who Plug was before I knew who Eisner was, because I saw those Coles and then the Frankensteins and the Werewolf by Nights and Weird World and all that. And then I discovered the kitchen sink reprint. I worked for Kitchen Sink. That's another one. The kitchen sink reprints of the Eisner stuff.
You've worked for everybody, including the kitchen sink.
Yeah. And then found the Warren reprints. Yeah. So you come to what you come to when you come to it.
Right.
But yeah, I met Hal and William, and they turned me on to all this stuff. And I met a guy in high school, Mark Finn, who he's basically my baby brother. I brought him into the group, and we all self-published some stuff. And like I said, we met guys in Austin. And that was kind of, meeting Hal and William was okay, I can do this comic stuff. Because I was just drawn to draw. I hadn't even thought about, this is something
I make a living doing it?
I was 15.
Yeah.
So I wasn't thinking, I didn't have that mindset yet. Right. So Hal really was the guy who kind of put me on this can be a career thing.
Well, did you ever have that moment where you thought you would end up working for a company like Marvel? I mean, when you figured out.
Well, yeah. I mean, honestly, that's one of my big regrets in my career, is because I am friends with guys like Paul Pope and Dean Hasfield and guys like that they develop their brand. They self-publish their own thing. And one of my big regrets is I focused too much on trying to work for other people doing their things. I mean, I really wish that instead I had worked on my own thing. Yeah. And develop my own brand. Because now I'm about to be 50 years old and I don't have a brand. And there's, I don't want to sound like I'm sour on comics. I love comics. I love comics. But it's any type of like entertainment industry, you've got an expiration date. Yeah. And unless you make your bones and become somebody, you're disposable. There's going to be somebody else who comes along later on who's willing to work for less is going to be. And I was never the flavor of the month, so I was I never got I'm the utility infielder, or the late inning defensive replacement. So I never got my big paycheck. If I had worked the way Paul and Dean and people like that did, and like Mahfood, people like that, and had built my rep and my name, and then, them come to me and let me do whatever I want to, I'd be in a better spot.
I want to ask you, but in that vein though, I've seen and appreciated your art, and you're a very technically savvy artist. Could that not equate to maybe, when you're reading comics, a lot of times you get fill-in artists for certain arcs. Does that not almost make you desirable in that sense? Because your art is versatile. You can do stuff that kind of bounces from one side to the other, that kind of has maybe an indie.
You want to be my agent? Sell that shit, man. I'll give you
I'm not just saying that. I mean, it's true. We're going to talk about your Houdini book here in a little bit, and that art looks very modern. It looks very fresh.
Really awesome, because I was kind of the big questions I always get are, how do I break into comics? What was the other one that I said that?
When did you start?
Yeah.
When did you start drawing?
Yeah. When did you start drawing? And the other one is, why don't you do more work? Why aren't you a bigger name? And it's like, man, if I had the answer to that question, I don't know. But I think I kind of do have that answer. Back when Heidi McDonald was an editor at Vertigo, I'd go into the offices. I was still living in New York, and I'd go into the offices. And I just flat out asked her one point, I said, why do you not think I'm not getting any more traction? Because, I know I'm not the best artist in the world, but I'm certainly as good as some other people that work, and probably better than some of the others that work, And she said that, your stuff is cool, but it has a low-life quality to it. And, you know, I kind of cocked my ear at her like a dog being shown a card trick. And she said, no, that's not necessarily a bad thing. She said, but you have that Eisner influence where everybody kind of slouches and your people aren't really pretty. You know, they look like me, you know. They're big gorillas. And their clothes are always sort of wrinkled. I mean, I don't draw pretty people.
Yeah.
I mean, I can, but left to my own devices, people are going to be a little goony looking,
right?
You know, and the goon is always going to creep in because I am a goon, and it makes sense. And I think part of it comes from the fact that while I've always liked mainstream comics, I've always liked, you know, silly and goofy and alternative stuff. And
they are comics.
Yeah.
I mean,
and so I think. Just through that diverse sort of like influences that affect me in ways that I'm not even aware of, but they're there. I think I'm a little too mainstream to be indie, and I'm a little too indie to be mainstream. So I'm sort of caught in this weird kind of this middle ground somewhere. Yeah, that I don't really
no man's land.
Yeah. Yeah,
there you go. Make a comic called No Man's Land.
Yeah.
You use Aftershock or Boom or somebody.
Wow.
Well, maybe not. Yeah. Aftershock maybe, or Image, and get it out there.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the other problem is I'm getting old and I'm married and I got to make a living, man. I'm not 20 years old. I can't live on
peanuts.
On ramen noodles and toast anymore.
Yeah, we can, but our doctors will look down on it.
Yeah, well, my wife isn't game for that either. So
there's not a good pension plan for freelance artists, unfortunately.
No. Well, my wife and I went and saw the Melvins a few years back, and Buzz was talking about a conversation he was having with his wife about retirement, and he said the musician's retirement plan is the barrel of a gun in your mouth.
Yeah.
And Mindy and I just kind of looked at each other and like, yeah.
I mean, I went and saw Motorhead 6 months before Lemmy died.
Yeah.
And, you know, just right after that, I was reading an article where somebody had talked to him. It was in some just trash zine. And they had talked to him, and they were like, well, you know, man, you're like, you know, your health isn't great. You're doing all this stuff. You're getting older. You know, are you still doing it just for the love of the rock and roll? He's like, I mean, yeah, kind of, but I love buying booze more, and you can't do that without fucking money.
Yeah.
So, you know, you need money for that kind of stuff. But, you know, we had talked about some of the work you have done, and, you know, is it okay if I ask you about the work you did on Daredevil without you punching me?
All I did was, the only Daredevil I did was...
Not Daredevil, Deadpool.
Sorry. I do that all the time, too, though. What do you want to know about it?
Well, I was just going to say, what was getting to do that? I mean, the movie, you know, the trailer actually just dropped today for the second movie.
Yeah.
What was that like, getting to do the pencils on that? And to see it blow up so much now and to have that character on your resume.
I mean, it's cool. I mean, I was glad to get to do it. You know, it was fun. It was drawn comics.
Yeah.
You know, I'd never read a Deadpool comic leading up to that, so I didn't. You know, I feel like I'm gonna. It's career suicide with John Lucas is the name of it.
We can edit out whatever you want.
But no. I mean, every now and then I'll be at a convention, and because if people know me, chances are it might be because I drew some Deadpool.
Well, that was before the juxtaposition of us living in the same city. That's how I knew you.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I got to be friends with Craig, and
you
know, now I consider us acquaintances and friends and all that stuff. But
I mean, it was cool, but like people will come up to me and they'll ask me all these questions about Deadpool, and I just don't have any answers for them.
Yeah.
And
was it kind of just a paycheck at that point in time?
It was a paycheck, and it was a hey, maybe I'll get to draw Deadpool, and this will give me some traction in my career, and I'll be able to get more work. And it was enjoyable. I mean, working with Jerry was cool. I mean, he seemed like a good dude. You know, Jordan returned my emails whenever I had a question.
Right.
That was cool. You know, I got and it's elevated my
convention status, if not.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, because before that, for years all I was doing was inking, and I'm not going to shit on inking because it paid my bills, and it's a lot of work, and I'm always grateful. I would ink now if somebody threw me a book. I'd love to do it. But nobody cares when you're an inker. Like convention people, like when they're trying to book you for a convention, they just don't care.
Yeah.
And I never really inked anybody. Like, you know, I wasn't Alan Davis's personal inker or, you know, this guy's. I was doing things here and there, inking buddies
Tony
of mine.
Moore's before anybody knew.
Yeah,
I was going to say, there are very few inkers who make it to known name status. I mean, off the top of my head, that's a guy that's working now, Mark Morales, maybe. One of the few
Mark
people.
Farmer is one that I know of Paul Neary, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's and again, Andy Parks is a good buddy of mine, and I mean, he's a great inker. I love him, but I mean, he transitioned to writing. You know, it's so yeah. I'm not shitting on inking. Inking is a lot of work.
Oh, it's a good inker can make a bad penciler look.
Yeah, I'm not being one of those guys who's going all inking. It's just tracing.
Just tracing, yeah.
But it did nothing for my profile.
Yeah,
right.
You know, back to the staying on the Deadpool thing. I thought, this will raise my profile. I'll get to draw more, and because the money's better,
right,
and the profile is better, and that was one of the first things that I drew after not drawing for years, because I like for 5 or 6 years all I did was ink. Out of the blue, Joe Casey shot me. I hadn't talked to the dude in years, and he shot me a note saying, "Hey, you want to draw an issue of this book, The Haunt?" I was like, "Hell yeah, I want to draw." And it was like an animal being let out of a cage, man, because I hadn't been able to draw in a long time. And it's still one of my favorite things that I've ever drawn, because I was just so excited to do it. And then right about the same time, Matt Sturgis, who is transitioned, is now Lila Sturgis. Sorry, Lila, used your dead name, but I had to explain it.
Hey, I appreciate you having enough respect to explain that. And, and to give Lila.
Yeah, but Lila contacted me and said, "Hey, you want to draw this graphic novel?" Because I know Lila because she was part of a writer's group with Mark Finn, my baby brother, and Bill Willingham and Chris Roberson. In Austin, Texas, called clockworkstorybook.com. They used to do like a shared universe writing prose thing. So I got to know her, and I'd made her laugh about something at a convention in a convention room one time, and she remembered it. And so I was drawing those things, and then I used my Haunt samples, and I'd moved back to New York and went in and saw Axel Alonso, who I've known since he was an assistant to Lou Stathis at Vertigo.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Hey, what are you, look," and I showed him that stuff, and he took me down the hall to see Jordan. So
Jordan D. White?
Yeah.
Is that who you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah. And I got the gig.
Yeah.
Man, that was a roundabout way to answer the question.
Hey, man, I like those kind of stories. I like rambling. I like those kind of stories. But so your experience with Marvel, though, after that, have you worked with Marvel since you did Deadpool?
No.
What was that?
No.
I know. Was there kind of a sour experience there, or was it just when you were done, it was just over?
Yeah, I just I followed up and I didn't get any more work from him.
Yeah.
I don't take it personally or anything.
Okay.
Well,
let's.
Jordan seemed like a nice guy.
He has a good mustache. If not,
Honestly, other than meeting him in the office that one time in passing, I've never met the dude.
He plays the ukulele. It's really fun.
That's what I've heard.
Well, let's quit talking about some of the stuff you've worked on. Let's talk about some of the stuff you've got coming out.
Okay.
So you've got this new book that's hitting, October, I think is
beginning of October. I think its release date is for New York Comic Con. Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about it.
Well, it's through Insight. Jeremy Holt is the writer. I know he did stuff for some heavy metal magazine, and he's done some other graphic novels. He's writing. I can't keep up with it, and I've got a bad memory anyway. But look him up, Jeremy Holt. He seems like a very nice man.
Have you had a chance to meet him in person?
No, we online
online
know each other. We've talked on the phone a couple of times, but he seems like a good dude. Mark Irwin, who is the editor for Insight, like I said, I know him from back in the days at Wildstorm. One San Diego, I went out there and got to go to the Wildstorm offices and met him, and we've just stayed buddies ever since. Cool. They were looking for an artist for the book, and I needed work.
Well, that worked out.
Yeah, it worked out. And so, it's a fun book. It's called After Houdini, and I don't know how much I should talk about it.
Well, you could maybe just give us a general synopsis without any spoilers, maybe? Is that possible?
Okay, well, yeah, it's called After Houdini. It's about Houdini's son, actually.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Being recruited for a shield-like organization of magicians whose purpose is to protect us from supernatural, metaphysical
kind of that
threats.
man on the wall kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah,
I can't wait to read it.
I've
got it ordered.
I hope so. I hope some people like it. And I'm working on the second volume now.
Very cool. So I'm glad it's already here to hear it's already getting a second volume.
That was the most boring.
Well, I mean, there's some stuff you can't talk about, though.
Yeah, I don't want to give it away.
Yeah, for
sure. Hopefully people will
like it. What's a synopsis?
How long have you been working on it?
Oh, entirely too long. Yeah. Entirely too long. But I finished it in January, and I'm working on the second one now.
Well, okay. Can you also? Is there any way you can tell me about the look of the book? I mean, without talking about plot or anything else. So, obviously your art style. I talked about it earlier. You've got a range where you can do stuff that leans more towards indie, more towards polished. Where would you say the art in this is? Also, is it going to be? Is it a black and white book? Is it going to?
It's in color, and I don't know. I mean, the Eisner. Somebody told me the other day that the Eisner influence is coming out, and I mean, Michael Golden is always on my mind. Wally Wood is always on my mind.
Yeah.
We were talking about Wrightson earlier. I love Wrightson. I mean, but Eisner is the big guy. I love Will Eisner. We talked about earlier who all the different artists that inspired me at different points, and at one point I wanted to be. Everybody my age at one point wants to be Neil Adams. Yeah. I'm not Neil Adams. You come to the realization, I'm not Neil Adams. And I wanted to be Wrightson. And it's just I can't be Wrightson because there's only one Wrightson. I want to be Barry Smith and Kaluta and all those guys. And I'm just not those guys. I was really into Jeff Jones for a while, but I'm just not that guy. And honestly, it wasn't until I was in my early 30s that, and I was actually, and how Joe Casey and I know each other is I got a job doing a Spartan one-shot for Wildstorm. It never came out. It was kind of based on sort of like a dopey pitch that I had of an alien comes to Earth and has been getting transmissions from Earth out in space.
Kind of Lovecraft-esque kind of thing, maybe?
Well,
a little bit.
What it is you learn that it's, or the pitch as it was, is that what it is, it's the alien was sort of like a teenage girl in outer space getting these transmissions, and the transmissions were like her Teen Beat magazine.
Okay.
And she had a big crush on Spartan, and that you find out at the end that really, and Joe, changed it up and made it into his own thing.
Right.
But, I drew this thing, and during working on that, my stuff got broader and more cartoony. And by the end of it, I was really loving the look of it. And I was like, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And have, in the time since then, have been slowly trying to refine that sort of cartoony, old school kind of, I don't know. I want to be I want to be this mix of Will Eisner and Wally Wood's Mad Magazine work, and Michael Golden with some Dave Stevens, and
You are the bastard child of the '80s.
I am. Well, I am this. And it's like, man, I mean, there's. That's the other thing. I think my tastes are, all kind of old school. Like, man, if I could draw like Kevin Nolan, I would.
Yeah.
I would just, if I ever drew anything half as cool as he draws, I would just drop my pencil and walk out into the wilderness. But there's a list of guys like that,
Well, so one of the things about Eisner, though, one of the things that gets me about his art, and I absolutely love his art. I love old pulp stuff, things like, The Spirit, obviously. But he kind of was one of the first guys that really played with panels. In the way that we think of now, in each book, this, the spirit was spelled out in panels, and I know he really, he influenced Kirby. The way that Kirby would do panels, where he the line breaks between the panels, he would have somebody gripping it like it was a bar and stuff. So he has an influence. Do you like to play with panels like that, or do you?
Yeah, I have. It depends on what it is. Lately I've been trying to just because it's a danger whenever you're working, you can just get too cute for your own good.
Yeah.
And I've been trying in recent years to just bring it back down to simple. And I'll play with things every now and then, and it's just kind of become there's going to be a big pause here as I'm trying to formulate my if I need it, I'll use it.
Yeah.
But if I don't need it, I don't use it.
Which is probably smart for any profession.
Yeah,
especially as an artist.
Yeah, like the the thing that I always bang on, and again, I don't hate comic book colorists. Man, it's an awesome job. I wish I knew how to do it. But there are things that are done in like colors nowadays that drive me crazy because there are all these like purples and pinks and
oversaturation
and just the odd color choices and effects that they use that in my mind creates sort of like this visual sort of soup.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with those colors. I just make broad generalizations like, what's with all the fucking purple and pink and turquoise? And what world, what fucking like post-apocalyptic hellscape are we living in that all these colors are everywhere? And I don't have a problem with those colors if it's appropriate for the thing. And, in a more European, like indie style, fine, it works on that. But
I was going to say, there's a few people it works very well for, and a lot of people try to mimic that, and I don't think it works as well.
Yeah, you have to look at what you're doing and say, is this appropriate for that?
And
if you're like, look, one of the things I talked to with the colorist that's on the Houdini thing, especially because it's a period piece, I said, I want a lot of like muted earth tones.
Yeah.
And just keep it very simple and very sort of real and day to day until you get to the crazy metaphysical, like otherworldly scenes.
And then go crazy.
Go balls out.
Yeah.
But if you don't, if it's like somebody, you see their kid, they're at the grocery store and they're screaming at their kid, and you can tell that kid's not hearing them anymore because that person's screaming all the damn time. Mm-hmm. It's if you're using purple and pink and chartreuse all the damn time, and I'm picking on colors because it's an easy example.
Yeah.
If you're using pink and purple and all of that all the damn time, it loses its meaning. It's like screaming at your kid at the grocery store. If you're screaming at your kid all the damn time, how are you going to drop an A-bomb on them when they've really screwed up?
Right.
And the same thing goes for like P. Craig Russell. He's one of those guys that I love. And you look. He knows when to drop the A-bomb. Like, his stuff is nice and simple and cartoony when he's telling you the story. Because the story is what is important. All the little details don't matter unless they apply to the story.
Right.
But then whenever he really needs to blow it out, he'll blow it out and really give you a sense and a feel for where you are in the atmosphere.
Right.
But then when he's just giving you information, if that information is important, everything drops back to this beautiful cartoony effect because he doesn't want to detract from what's really important.
Yeah. That really punchy moment.
So back to what I was saying about the panels, it's like if I'm trying to give you a sense of unease, then I might play around with the panels and, if I want to disorient you or make you feel like, holy, what is going on here, then I'll play around with that. But if I'm just giving you information, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D. And I'll use the camera angles that I need to and the lighting effects that I need to affect the information that I'm giving.
Yeah, for me, and just thinking off the top of my head, I'm going to, again, commit comic book blasphemy. Kirby's New God work. Mm-hmm. Every panel almost is this weird abstract thing. And so when people are talking about it, they're like, "Oh, this," and I was like, "But yeah, that's just a random panel. The whole book is like that." So there's not a punch moment like that for Kirby, for me, at least.
Man, I don't even know how to address that.
Comic book blasphemy.
I really, it's funny because like Mindy, my wife, she's not a comics fan, but she appreciates art.
Yeah.
And Kirby is someone who has just escapes her. She does not know why and she'll make the argument of, well, is he really that great of an artist, or you just think he's great because he's in comics? And
I think he's really that great of an artist.
He really is that great.
I don't want to misconstrue what I was saying as me saying Kirby's
No, I'm not.
He is the king.
I'm not, but they're talking about like your abstractions and all that. And at one point, I was telling her, well, because he's a deconstructionist. He's deconstructing everything to its most basic form so that it hits you like on a gut level.
Yeah. And
she was like, well, why? And I thought about it for a little bit. And Mindy loves punk rock music. Mm-hmm. And that's what punk rock music is. It's deconstructing rock and roll to its most basic form so that it punches you in the gut. And so when I explained her to her like that, she was like, okay. And she looks at Kirby and she can look at some of it and still go, okay, that's cool. But
it's great to have those significant others that actually make you think.
Yeah.
About the
and I had thought about him before, but it was just like, I think about it, but why is that important? Well, because it's punk rock, man. That's why.
It's punk rock.
Well, and that's
Jack
why
Kirby is punk rock.
It's breaking it down.
My favorite Kirby stuff is the Marvel stuff, to where, for what it was, Kirby didn't have free reign with the Marvel stuff to do anything that he wanted to. With the New Gods, he did. And I think that's why you just get so much just weird Kirby abstract stuff in the New Gods. And with the Marvel stuff, you get those moments of just punchy Kirby, where he just, he has those moments where it's, normalized, then boom, you get Galactus reaching through the page and grabbing a panel or something like that.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I mean,
no one agrees with you.
Oh, that's
we
fine.
can see what
That's
you're
fine.
saying.
No, I'm sure there's someone rocking quietly in a corner somewhere that agrees with you.
So I will say that you showed us some of the pages from Houdini, from after Houdini, and I've seen a lot of your work, John. We've been friends for a while. I've seen a lot of your stuff. You've shown me your panels. That's some of the best work I've ever seen.
Oh, well, thanks, man. Thanks.
It really is. The one that keeps popping into my mind is there's a street corner with a sign on it, and for some reason that panel just looked fantastic.
Oh, well, thanks, man. I drew that one panel over and over again about 5 or 6 times.
Did you really?
Yeah. I think you may have noticed that there were paste ups all over that page.
I didn't even notice that. But
was that the one where he was the character was carrying?
I think so. And
carrying a box on the one
street
you said
sign
you thought he
on
looked like a
Second
young Jack Kirby.
That was actually me. I was going to say, I actually thought that the main character looked like a young Jack Kirby in that picture. So was that an influence on it, or were you looking? I mean, you can tell by that you don't do a whole lot of what I would call photo referencing to actually draw. You might look at a picture, but I'm not
doing, copying anything.
Yeah, you're not doing the whole thing where you transmute it over there. It's not that at all. But were you looking at a picture of? There's plenty of artists that do that need to stop. Were you looking at a picture of Houdini and trying to?
I have one picture of a young Houdini from when he was like a teenager, and so I've just kind of had to figure out how to make him look.
And that's who you've modeled his son after.
Well, no, the one that you were looking at is the second volume, and that one is Houdini.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's young Houdini. I'll drag the one of the after Houdini out and show it to you. His son looks different than he does. Okay. There are some similarities, like he's got the nose, but he's shaped a little different.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm looking forward to it.
I can't wait. So, like I said, again, that book drops hopefully October. 1st of October is when it's scheduled.
That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be up for New York Comic Con. I'm going to try to get up to New York Comic Con this year.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah. I don't know that I'll be able to table, but I may just go up there to knock around.
You didn't do many cons this year, did you? Have you been going to many?
It's just kind of started this year. Yeah. I did one a week or so ago. I've got another one in a couple of weeks, and then I'm doing Free Comic Book Day at Shonuff Comics in Tuscaloosa, I think. Yeah, honestly, I just do a bunch of little regional shows. That's one of the things living in Arkansas. You're so far away from everything that there aren't any major shows that I don't have to fly to.
Right.
And so I wind up doing a bunch of little, which is fine. I like small shows.
Dallas, if you're talking about big shows, Dallas might be the closest one to here.
Or something.
Yeah. I did that one a few years ago. I want to do Charlotte again. I haven't done Charlotte in forever. Having lived in the East for so long, all my favorite shows are in the East.
About Heroes Con?
But they're so far away. I love Heroes.
Oh,
but I haven't been to Heroes in probably going on a decade.
Heroes is my Grail Con.
Yeah.
Because I'm such a fan of. I like cons.
Yeah.
Cons are fun. Yeah. I get really annoyed with the television elements being involved with it, and I'm maybe a little bit grumpy old man in that sense.
Yeah.
I get really annoyed with people with giant fucking cosplay things blocking Artist Alley. Yeah. I get annoyed by those things very, very easily. But everything I've heard about Heroes Con is it's just like an art lover's dream.
Yeah,
it's where art lovers go to just die. Yeah. I want to go to that one so bad.
Yeah.
That's my dream con.
Yeah, it's a great. So you've never been?
No, I've never been.
It's a great show. It's a great show, man. That one, Baltimore. I love Baltimore.
No, when I go to that one, I've got to go with money. Like I can't just
go. Baltimore?
No,
Charlotte.
Con. Yeah. I got to go with a pocket full of dollar bills so I can bring home some goodies.
Yeah, and I used to do Philly years ago, and I loved Philly. But that was just because it was so close to New York, and Philly's a great food town.
Yeah.
And where the convention center, I don't even know if it's the same thing because I haven't done it in so long. The convention center was, walking distance from the hotels, and all the restaurants where everybody would hang out. And you may break off and go somewhere, check out a Phillies game or go to another, but everybody always wound up congregating in one of a couple of hotels. Yeah. That's one of the things that I haven't been to Charlotte in forever, but that's one of the great things that I love about that show is the convention is just right down the street and from the hotels where everybody congregates or afterwards. So you've got this great, first of all, just like all the artists that go there, artists and writers that go there. So it's vacation for nerds. It's like artists that I don't get, that I know, but I only get to see, every now and then are there.
Yeah, it's a work convention in that sense for you guys.
Yeah, but it's also a matter of, it's like the fans are clued into the fact that it's kind of going on. So it's a cool mixing of fans and creators.
Those are honestly like some of my favorite cons to go to. Like I think Comic Conway does it pretty well, where they allow the fans to interact with the artist really well. I don't think a lot of them.
But it's not a bar afterwards. That's always pumps up the the interaction.
We just got to be more proactive. Is all that comes down.
Craig and I are actually going to head up to C2E2.
Yeah, we talked our spouses into.
I want to do that one.
We talked our spouses into going on vacation and just happened to plan it around C2E2. And they both were like, okay, whatever.
I've never done that one. I did the old Chicago show,
the Wizard World.
Yeah. I don't think it was a Wizard World back then. Maybe it was. I don't know. But I did that one years ago and enjoyed it. I want to go to Emerald City. I've never been to Emerald City.
I've never done Emerald City either. I would love to. Especially because now, in a lot of ways, that area is the new New York.
Man, get the fuck out of here.
You don't think so? No.
New York is New York.
Well, no, I was saying for comics, though.
And even New York isn't New York anymore.
I was saying more so for comics, though, because, you've got so many creators live in that area now. You've got Bendis, Kelly Fraction.
I'll say
they're the new San Francisco.
Maybe there, I was going to say, it's a hot spot for comics.
That's more so what I meant, is because you have so many working
professionals. Or even San Francisco, that's not even fair, but,
San Francisco's a lot of fun. I love that city. Well, man, again, I want to thank you for sitting down and chit-chatting with us. We're going to just wrap this up and get out of your hair. But is there last thing you want to talk about before we get out of here? Any, if you've got a place where people can come and find your work. I don't know if you do commissions online.
Yeah, I do when I have time to do them. You can find me on my Facebook page, my Not At All Douchey Artist page. John Jolton Johnny Lucas. I'm on Twitter. At him what jolts. I'm on Instagram. I think I'm under Jolton Johnny Lucas.
You are.
I think that's what it is. Yeah, I've got a Patreon page. I think it's just under John Lucas. I don't know. Go find my Facebook page. I'll post that crap on there. You can find it there.
There you go.
But I think that's all.
Awesome. Well, maybe we can get some folks to come commission your stuff and send you some money. That's always nice.
That would be awesome. Go support my Patreon page. I'll send you something free every now and then if you give enough.
Thank you so much for sitting down with us, brother.
Southern Fried Geekery.
All right, guys. We hope you enjoyed that. As much as we enjoyed sitting down and talking with John. What a great guy, man.
Yeah, thanks, John. We appreciate you coming on the show and visiting with us and allowing us to come into your home, especially, and see your studio. It was a great time, and we'll catch you at the next show, bud.
Yeah, man. Again, look for his book coming out this October. It's called After Houdini.
Yes.
Should be out. Looking forward to it. It's going to be great. But get out and go check out the next couple of Dick Tracy strips in your local paper. Because
all this week.
Yeah, it's done by him, and it's some really good stuff. We were privileged enough to get to see those, and it's an exciting Dick Tracy story.
Yeah, well, it looks great. Can't wait to see it on the funny pages.
All right, guys. Have a great Easter. Happy Passover for our Jewish friends, and for the rest of us, April Fool's Day. Go forth and love some comics.